Hey you guys, this is Natalie. I am with the Ginger Quilter, and I am so lucky that I get to be one of the 12 presenters on the Jingle and Mingle today. I hope you guys saw some awesome crafting and holiday info yesterday, and then today we're doing it all over again. So Jonica just finished up with her cookie recipe, and I'm so excited to try that recipe. I love baking, and I can't wait to give that a shot. So today, in my presentation, we are going to work on our Jingle and Mingle Christmas pot holder. So I had a little prep guide to help you guys cut your fabric beforehand, because I was worried that we would go over my time slot if I didn't have you guys prep a little bit. So if you have not done that, go over and watch the fabric prep guide so that all your pieces are cut, and then we're ready to hop in to make our pot holder. So to start, we are going to use 2.5-inch squares. That is what's going to make our cover right here, our top. And what's cool about a pot holder is it's a complete mini quilt. So if you're new to quilting, if you are intimidated by quilting, this is a great way to start, because you're going to use all the same techniques that you would use in a large quilt, but on a miniature scale, so you can get really comfortable with those. Okay, so to start, we're going to use our 2.5-inch squares, and what we're going to do is just lay them out. I'm going to figure out where my camera's sitting here. Okay, we're going to lay them out in the right order that we want. So anything goes. There's no right or wrong way to do this, just whatever design you like with the fabrics that you cut out. I like to mix colors. So like, I don't like reds touching or greens touching, or at least the same lightness of greens or anything like that. I'm kind of picky that way. But if we lay these out in a 4x4 design, if I pull this back, you guys can probably see better. There we go. And like I said, anything goes. There's no right or wrong. See, I have 2 greens right here. I don't like that, so I'm going to shift this green over here and do that instead. Nope. I need a red right here. I don't want that red. I want this red. There we go. So you'll need a total of 16 squares, and you can cut up all the fabrics. You can cut up a few of the fabrics. It's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong here. Okay, I'm probably thinking too hard about this. Time to rein it in, Natalie. Put that there. What color? I want a black there, or a dark green. There we go. Dark green. And I want a green right there. Okie doke. Here we go. I'm going to switch these two. So now I have my 4x4 design here all set with what I want to sew. I have my sewing machine off to the side here. I'm not going to show my hands on the sewing machine because it's just a simple straight stitch. If you want any assistance on how to sew a straight stitch, you can let me know and I would love to help you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to stay in rows. We want to sew the top row together, the second row, the third row, and the fourth row. So we're going to pair those up, one fabric to one fabric. And we're going to sew them together. Now, when you're dealing with this zigzaggy, can you guys see that? The zigzag versus a straight edge. I just line up the outside of the zigzag, the outer points, to the straight edge there, and that is going to help them stay in the right measurement. So here we go. We're going to sew It's with all quilting, you want to sew 1/4 of an inch. And a lot of machines do not naturally sew 1/4 of an inch. So I believe if you are sewing with a 5.5 millimeter stitch width, that's 1/4, or there is a 1/4 inch foot, or a 1/4 inch setting on a lot of machines. So just get to know your machine and make sure you're doing 1/4 of an inch, because that's going to help you keep your blocks all the same size and the right measurement. Okay, so we sewed 2 together here. We'll keep those in the same row that they came from, and sew 2 again. See if I can get these guys open. 2 again. So now I have 2 sets of 2 right here, and I'm going to sew those together. Make sure I get them in the right order. Okay, so now I have all 4 of row 1. So those go right here on top, and I'm going to sew the next row, the next row, and the next row together the exact same way. So I'll sew 1 to 1 and then 2 to 2 until I have a row like this. Okay, let's see if I can show you this. Now I have my 4 rows all the way I want them, all sewn together, 4 pieces each. So now we need to head to the iron to press these seams in the right direction. Okay, so for this part, I wanted to get a close-up of my hands so you can see the details of how I'm ironing this. I am using a wool pressing mat on a towel because I'm on my dining table, but if you have just a plain old ironing board, that will work just fine. So when I have my 4 rows lined up here, and I kind of got mine out of order, so I'm just showing you this for an example. I want to make sure that on the 1 and 3 rows, my seams are going to go this way, and on 2 and 4, my seams are going to go that way. So it is good to know which rows you're working with here. See where I messed up my, there, nope, there. Okay, so these ones are going to go this way, 1 and 3 this way, 2 and 4 that way. So I'm going to take 2 and 4 and set those aside and just flip these over. We're going to press our seams down this way. So I'm going to spritz it with a little bit of water. You don't have to do that. I prefer to use steam. The water really helps it get those seams really nice and crisp. But and you can use the steam from your iron, but I just prefer to do it this way. Okay, so we got 1 row going this way. We're going to do our next row. Just a really tiny little spritz of water will make your seams nice and crisp. Okay, so we got 1 and 3 up here, and now 2 and 4, we're going this way. Now, I could just flip these upside down and press them going this way, but I don't want to confuse you. So we've got the seams going this way. So there's 2. I'm going to set that in the right row here. And 4. Going this way. And you can kind of give it a little help. Okay. So there we are with our pressing. Now you can see this piece wants to kind of go like that. That's okay. That probably had something to do with the way I pressed it. You can kind of, especially while the fabric is still warm, you can really ease that fabric back to straight, and all is well. So now we're going to go back to the sewing machine, where if we lay our pieces out like this, we're going to sew 1 to 2 and 3 to 4. And we want to do right sides together. So I'm just going to fold number 1 over number 2 here. And this is the part that's called nesting your seams. So do you see I've got a seam right here and a seam right here. I want those to match up perfectly. So you can see here that this seam is going this way and this seam is going that way. The seam allowance, I should say, the little flappy thing. So if you feel, you can get those to bump right up against each other in the middle, and that is going to give you perfect corners on your squares. So I'm trying to show you here. See how those are perfect because I have them bumped up perfectly with this flap going this way and this flap going that way. So I'm going to match up those while I sew them. Row 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and then we're going to sew the 2 sets together and then come back and press. I forgot to mention that this is a great time to use your pins because I was showing you how to line those up, those seams. And if you use a pin, you can just pin right through right there. And as you sew down, you're just going to stop and pull this out right before you get to that point. And I will show you guys how to do that. So I'm feeling how those are going to fit together here. There we go. I'm going to pin. I go down through all the layers of fabric and come back up. And then 1, 2. Okay, so we got our pieces pinned on all the seams. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and show you how I do it. Okay, here I am at my sewing machine. I'm going to set my fabric under my presser foot and just go ahead. Okay, so this needle is about to go under this pin is about to go under where my needle is, and I don't want to run over that. So I'm going to pull that out. Keep going. Again. That one was getting in the way. Okay. Now we have our 2 rows sewn together. And now I'm going to repeat that for row 3 and 4 together, and then this first set and the second set. So we'll have 4 all together. All right, so we are back with all 4 of our rows sewn together. So now we do need to press again, but this is just to get all of our rows to lay flat. So you can see on the back, this is how we sewed it horizontally. And we just need this flap, this seam allowance, to lay flat. So I usually sew mine all in the same direction. I'm going to sew them down in this case. So just like before, I'm going to give it a little spritz of water and come in with my iron. And I'm gently tugging here, gently, because I want to make sure that those seams really open and I get them really nice and flat. You don't want to pull really hard because especially when the fabric is warm or wet, it's going to warp the fabric and your squares aren't going to look like squares anymore. Do that again on the next row. And our last one. All right, so now we are really moving. Now we have our flat piece right here, all ready to layer with the other layers, the batting, the thermal interfacing, and the backing, and we're going to quilt it together on the machine. All right, so remember, whoops, camera's going crazy here. Remember that we layered together our backing fabric here. We want the pretty part facing down, the right side of the fabric, layered with our thermal interfacing, our cotton batting, and now we layered on our finished top here. Now, it is going to be slightly smaller on the edges. That's on purpose. So now what we want to do is pin it together so that when we're running this through the sewing machine to quilt the layers together, that it's not going to get crumpled up or puckered anywhere. So we're just going to pin, and there's not a real science to this. I just pin along the edges. Let's see. I'm going to go down and back up through all my layers. You can use safety pins if you want for this, or you can use straight pins. You will probably occasionally poke yourself with a straight pin, but that's just the easiest thing to get in and out, so that's what I like to use. So I'm going to come over here. I do all my perimeters, trying to keep it flat. And then I will go on into the center to make sure that gets fixed in place also. Pins are getting all tangled up. I can hear my dog snoring in the background, so if you get any whisper of that, you're welcome. Okay, so we did all of the outside, and now I just want to do a few on the inside to make sure those stay in place too. Okay, so we are all pinned together, and now we're going to take it to the sewing machine to quilt the lines in. Let me show you how I did it on the original. I just sewed kind of irregular lines here. I think I did 3 close by, made a gap, 3 close by. And you can do it however you want. If you want regular, perfectly striped, you can. If you want crisscross, you can. If you want zigzags, you can. This is the simplest way to show you guys how to do it, so that's how I'm going to do it. But there is a lot of cool creativity in the way that you quilt with the stitches that hold the fabric and the backing together. All right, so let's go to the sewing machine. All right, so because we are just doing straight line quilting, we don't need to change the foot right here on our sewing machine. If you're going to do all sorts of designs, then you probably want to use a quilting foot or a darning foot, but that is not what we're doing today. So we're going to do straight lines. I'm going to start on a different corner so you can see the color contrast. So I'm going to try and kind of sew this one down all the way down one edge just to secure that. Kind of gives us a starting point of our project, of all of our quilting. And the good thing is as you sew this down, you can take those pins out and they're not going to be a problem. So we're just kind of, we do have some bulky layers here, so we're going to try and be aware of how that is laying flat. Try not to get any puckers. If we do, it is not the end of the world. You can either unpick it or just decide that you don't care and move on. Okay, so I'm going to cut that thread. So we sewed all the way down here. Now I am going to line up the side of my foot here with the seam I just made and sew another one, starting back at the beginning. I want to show you guys, I noticed I did get some puckers a little bit right there, but you know what? That is going to probably be trimmed and covered in my binding. So I'm not going to worry about that at all. I got a little tiny one there too. I do not worry about those too bad. Okay, we're going to do it again. Okay, so now I've got 3 rows. Now I can continue on just doing this perfectly spaced stripe all the way down, or I can make a big gap and then do another 3, make a big gap, do another 3. Like I said, it's totally up to you. I believe I just eyeballed the gap this time, or when I made the sample. So I'm just going to do that this time too. You do have a little bit of a risk of your lines being wonky, but we'll see how I did. Hey, that's not so bad. That's a pretty straight line. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. And you thought quilting was going to be hard. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, pull this out. Now you can see I started up kind of close here, close to this seam right here. And as I go down here, it gets wider and wider. That, you know, that's just part of the process. If that bothers you, I can like reroute my lines now and try to stay closer to this one, or I can just stay close to the one I was already sewing. It's just totally up to you what matters to you. Another thing you can do, which I did not do in this case, you can take a heat erasable pen. It's called a friction pen, and you can draw the lines with a ruler, and then you're following lines that you've drawn, and then as soon as you iron them, those lines disappear. Those pens are so cool, and I use them all the time. But in this case, I did not. So I'm just going to follow the lines I've already made, kind of trying to split the difference here. The thing about handmade is it's not perfect, and that is part of the charm, isn't it? Okay, so now I'm going to keep on going the whole way through the rest of my hot pad in that same pattern, 3 space, 3 space. However you want to do it is perfectly fine. Okay, so now that we're done putting this together and quilting it, now we need to trim to an 8 by 8 inch square. So we're back on our cutting mat here. So first I'm going to cut a straight line on one edge of the fabric, trying to line up the edges of one edge of the fabric. Now I have a straight line that I can measure 8 inches. So I started on the 22 over here, which means I'm going to cut on the 30 over here. Okay, so we're square right here. Now we're going to rotate. And I'm going to cut here on 22 and here on 30. All right, so we're going to cut over here on the 30. And now we have our beautiful trimmed pot holder. And so the next step that we're going to do is the binding. That's our final step. So we're going to bring back our ironing stuff because we need to press our binding strip. here's our binding strip that we cut. We need to press it like that, all the way down. So I'm gonna grab my iron stuff. Okay, we're back with our pressing stuff. So what we wanna do is press this long piece. It's 2.5 inches by 42-ish. Now this is easier with a bigger area, pressing area, but we're gonna make it work with this small area, and that's okay because a lot of us don't have a huge sewing area or crafting area to work with. Some of us are probably working on a dining table or kitchen table or just wherever we have room. So I'm showing you how to work in small spaces today. All right, so we got our binding. So to attach the binding, we want to flip over to the back of our pot holder, and we want the end that is folded here, this end, we want that to go on first. So we're going to go about halfway in here, and we're going to start pinning just this side till the end. All right, so we're going to pin about right here and here. So what we're going to do is sew at 1/4 inch all the way till the end, and then at the very end we're going to sew a little 45-degree angle here. So I marked it. We're going to go right here, a pin, and then a 45 right to that corner, 45-degree angle. Okay. Okay, so set that to 1/4 inch. I'm not going to start right at the end. I'm going to start down a little bit, kind of where this first pin is starting, like 2 inches away from the end. I'm going to take those pins out as I go. And I don't want to go all the way off this end right here. I want to stop where that 45-degree angle is going to hit, and I'm going to turn and sew off at an angle right there. Let's see if I did a good job. Yep, so I didn't go straight off the end here. I went straight and then turned right there. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to flip the corner. You're going to fold this up at the 45 degrees. Probably easier if I do it like this. Fold it like this, up, and then we're going to fold it down like that. There we go. So you've got this little flappy thing here. And now we're going to go from here, just so straight down like that. So I'm going to pin this in place. That wasn't a very sharp pin. Let's try that again. Pin this right there, and sew from here all the way down. So I can pin all the way down here, or I can just kind of hold it in place, the fabric. That is totally up to you. And I'm going to do the same thing, careful not to go off the edge. Once I get to that corner, I'm going to turn and go off like that. So see, we went all the way and then turned off at our corner. We're going to fold again, fold up at a 45-degree angle, and then fold it down. And now we're going to sew all the way. That's 2 corners done. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the last 2 corners. Okay, so now I'm on my last side here. And what I want to do, here's where we started. I want to cut, see, we started sewing right here. I'm going to cut this length somewhere in here. So let me grab my scissors. So I want this to overlap a little bit, right there. And it's not straight, but it's okay. It's going to be covered up. So what I'm going to do is tuck this piece into the finished piece here. And it takes a little bit of wrestling to get it to lay pretty. But I'm going to tuck this in here. So the finished pretty fold is sitting right there. This one I probably do want to pin just to get that nice and secure as I sew over it. Okay, and now I'm going to sew the whole thing like that. All right, so I want to sew over the line where I started. Right here, I overlap from where I started. Now you're going to see I have a little pucker here, and if that drives you crazy, you can unpick that, but I'm going to show you it's going to be totally covered up when we flip our binding, so I'm not going to worry about that. So now what we want to do, let's take the camera out a little bit. What we want to do is flip this binding over to the front. And now because we folded those corners in kind of a funny way, we have a really nice mitered corner right here. And when we sew that down, it's going to look awesome. Super professional. A little thread to cut here. Really nice. Okay, so now that we've folded this over, it's kind of just like floppy here. We're going to just choose a spot to start and fold this over. We want to make sure that the edge right here is over this line right here. Okay, and we can pin it in place. Sometimes I pin these, sometimes I just kind of wing it, but I'll show you how I pin it in case you want to. If I can get my pins to do the right thing. Okay, so you're going to go down. You don't really need to go through all the layers. You just want to secure that top layer there. And you want to go, see, we want to go just past this line, this that sewed on the binding in the first place. I want to go a little further than that. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to start kind of right here, like an inch or two from the corner, and go all the way to the corner, this other corner, and I'm going to tell you what to do when we get there to that corner. I'm going to scoot the camera in a little. Okay, so on this one, I like to just make sure that my needle, you can see my needle when I go down right here, I'm right near the edge of this fabric. And that's kind of where we want to stay, is right close to this edge all the way. And that way it just kind of looks like a nice finished stitch, because if we stitch over here, we're going to get like a flap, and we don't want that. So we want to stitch it down nice and secure right there near the edge. Oops, my thread came out. 1 second. See if we can fix that. Okay, here we go. Have a little thread tail coming with me, that's okay. You can take this nice and slow so you don't feel rushed or out of control. 1 stitch at a time is fine. Okay. All right, so now that we're close to this corner right here, I'm going to cut my thread and show you the next step. Once you get more comfortable, you might not need to cut your thread to do this, but I forgot to take out my pins. Okay, so we're right here, and now because we've folded this over, we're getting this little triangle corner right here, and that's supposed to happen. So, bring this up closer. We're sewing, 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 and now we have this little corner. So we're just going to fold him in, just like this. And now you're going to get a beautiful mitered corner on this end too. So now I'm going to sew, 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 and just turn the corner right here and start going this way. Easy peasy, right? Okay. So I'm going to pin this in place because I want to get a nice corner. Let's see how I'm going to pin that. Just kind of hold it in place there. Okay, so I'm going to start again where I left off. I made it through that last spot. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot. I can leave my needle down. And now we're going to go over the next side. So we can go ahead and pin, if you want, these layers. Oh, this is kind of hard to do while it's hooked up here. Okay, so we turned the corner. Now I'm going to use my pins. Quilters, they make these little clips called binding clips that quilters love because they just clip your binding instead of having to pin it. And those are really handy. Okay, right there. So this is the bulky part where we're like merging the two ends of our fabric. So we probably want to pin right there or close by just to make sure he stays in place right there. When I first started quilting, binding was the most intimidating part for me. And I've done it, like 100 million times at this point, so it's not so scary anymore. But I do remember being very terrified of binding. So it's okay if this doesn't come easy at first. You will get better. Okay, so I'm going to start back where I left off on my thread and just catch up here. I am going to go slow because I have more bulk with my layers kind of piling up over here because of my ends joining. Oh, see? I got a little pucker. I'm just going to go back over that. There we go. Okay, so now I'm getting close to this end again, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to fold this over like that, and I get a great little mitered corner right there. So I'll just borrow this pin and go right through. And I'm just going to go straight, make sure I caught that corner of the new side, turn, and go. Okay, so we're coming up on this last corner. So we're just going to do that same thing. This one I stitched a little close right here. I probably should have started a little bit further down. So it's just going to be a little bit of wrestling the fabric, but it's no big deal. We're going to get it. Okay, good. There we go. We got our corner right here. All right, caught that last edge. I'm going to take the last few stitches on this side. And voila! Got to trim this thread right here. And look at that. Okay, I'm going to go back to overhead view so we can talk about finishing this up. I got a little ahead of myself. I wanted to walk you through one last step. So we need a little hanging tag right here so we can hang our pot holder if you want to. So what we're going to do is go back to one of the squares that you haven't cut yet. So this is a 5x5. And what we're going to do is cut it in half only one direction. So we want a 2.5 by 5 inch rectangle. Okay, and we're just going to use that. And what we're going to do is press it. You can use your iron if you want, or you can probably just get away with finger pressing this. So we're going to press it in half, just kind of finger press it here, and then open it up. See, we've got a crease right there. Now we're going to fold our edges in. Give that a finger press. And another edge in, like this. So now we have a long, narrow strip. So what we're going to do is just sew a real quick seam on the sewing machine on this edge and on this edge. So it has just a straight edge to hold it together. Sorry, a straight seam to hold it together on both sides. So I'm going to go and do that real quick. Okay, so I just sewed that on, easy peasy. Now what we're going to do is make a little loop like this. I'll actually trim your ends first. Just make them nice and clean. Trim our ends. Now we're going to make a loop right here and get our pot holder. Choose a corner. That one has a thread. I'm going to come over here. Choose a corner you want to secure this on. And we are going to sew this down. So you can use your sewing machine and just do a real quick little sew, like a tack to hold that down. And then we're going to put a button over it. For your button, this is totally optional. You don't need to put a button on. This is a wooden button, so it's not going to melt if I touch it to a hot pan. So if you are using a button, make sure it's wooden or, I don't know, some other melt-proof material. Wood is the only one I can think of right now. So what I'm going to do, go sew a quick little tack, and then we're going to hand sew on our button. Okay, so I took that to my machine and just sewed through that fabric a couple times. You can see there's a little spot on the back. I can trim those threads. That's where I sewed that in. So now I'm just going to sew on my button. You could, if you know how to use the button sewing on function on your sewing machine, you could do this by machine. But I will admit that after all these years of using a sewing machine, I don't know how to do a button on a sewing machine. I know it's technically easy, but I'm probably an embarrassment to my industry. I don't know how to do that, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. Okay, so what we want to do is kind of cover up those raw edges of the loop. And we're just going to go all the way through and pull that on the back side and go through a few times here. See if I can find my way. There we go. Now we're going through a lot of layers of fabric, so it takes a minute, and it helps if you have thick nails on. You can kind of use those as a proxy thimble, but a thimble probably is a better tool. That is another thing that I don't use very often, is a thimble. Okay, so we've gone through a few times here. You can go through as many as you want to make that really secure And then we're just going to tie that off. I just go in, since all my loops are kind of going this way, I'm going to go against my loops and just loop in a couple times. And that just kind of makes a good little knot there. I'm going to trim it. I had some other threads to trim from before too. Get them all? Nah, we need some more. Okay, have a few extra threads to trim. All right. Okay, we are done. We finished our Jingle and Mingle Christmas pot holder. It is ready to gift away, ready to use for your own Christmas cookies and your own Christmas traditions. These are really great pot holders. They are machine washable. You can dry them in the dryer and they're going to hold up for a long time. So I hope you have enjoyed making this. For some of you, this might be your first quilt, and that's not a small feat. So I hope you're inspired by this experience to try some new things, dip your toe into the water of quilting. I would be happy to help you on that journey. You can catch my business and info at the Ginger Quilter. That's my social Facebook group. The website is gingerquilterbox.com. We do have a subscription box for quilters. If you did not get this kit and you would still like it, I do have several left in my shop. So head to gingerquilterbox.com or one of the links in the page, the guide for my class, and you can absolutely grab one of those. Coming up, we have Pam with From the Heart Art. She's going to be doing the class at 1 o'clock Central Time. There is a little bit of a gap between the end of my class and the beginning of her class. This is a great opportunity for you to go join the giveaway. It's a really big giveaway. Every one of the presenters has donated something to this, and it's a big deal. So don't miss the chance to enter. The drawing for that's going to be next Friday, so you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Let's see, did I miss anything? I don't think so, but thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I hope that you'll follow me on my Facebook page, The Ginger Quilter, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much.